this was a tweet this has been a few days back, from Coug-A-Sutra. I've been following him, kind of watching what he says. Not everything about college football, not everything about the Pac-12, not everything about his alma mater, Washington State, but I have noticed him. The headline of the day was that Washington Cougars, obviously the AD, suggesting that media deal was going to be flat. So with that, we can all start to bank on Colorado and Arizona leaving. It also feels like the national media has been correct in the reporting about the Pac-12 media rights. It's been a tough day. Now, things can change since then, and Coug-A-Sutra, who's a Washington State alum and also a blogger, joins us on 365 Sports. How you doing? Good afternoon.
Smokey, how we doing, man?
I'm doing really, really well, and I do appreciate you joining us. And I know you want the Pac-12 to be healthy and survive and the Pac-12 media deal work out, want Washington State and Oregon State and others to have a home. Have you changed your mind since that tweet back when Schultz spoke, and so did Washington State's board?
A little bit. You know, I think that things change in a hurry just based on time. I mean, I think that most college football fans can, take at face value that if folks want to leave and there are invitations that are already out there, they would have already left. So I think that we can bank that there's some sort of media deal that's in the work for the Pac-12. One of the things that was really confusing about the comment that was made by WSU's president in front of the Board of Regents a week or so ago is this idea that the projected revenue of this new media deal is going to be flat. The question is flat relative to what? And since the initial statement, you have folks like Mandel out of The Athletic that thinks that flat means that the annual deal is going to be somewhere around $380 million, which would be about $7 million more than the Big 12 deal. I think that that's really unlikely. The thing that the Pac-12 has to deal with for those in Stick Nation that haven't been paying really close attention is that the Pac-12 overbilled Comcast by about, I think that the most recent projection is about $70 million. So all member schools are going to have to pay that back. Then on top of that, they downsized or moved out of San Francisco to move to a new headquarters for both the conference and the network. That resulted in cost overruns of anywhere between $10 to $15 million per source. So all that money is going to have to be paid back. So flat revenue means that they, presumably means that they would be getting more or less what it is that they're currently receiving, which is right around $27 million, including Tier 3 rights. So when you factor the amount of money that they probably have to pay, or that they do have to pay back to both Comcast and also in terms of the cost overruns, you're probably looking at a value that is somewhere right within 10% of what the Big 12 is expecting to get. Now the question is that if all of that is really happening, what's the delay? Why haven't these opportunities for expansion been offered to San Diego State? Why haven't they been offered to SMU? And I think probably the reason for that is that I would think that probably the most logical partner that they have is Apple. Apple's never been involved in the college football deal before. And there's a lot of rumors that a part of the Apple package may include some sub-licensing to either ESPN for their nighttime window or to Fox Sports 1 that apparently still has openings in their nighttime window. That results in a whole bunch of lawyer issues that will probably take a while to put together. And as long as that deal isn't signed, things can fall apart, especially for a school like Colorado, who has a history with the Big 12 and also needs money.
So, again, this is just like a bad toothache. I explained that to somebody on our chat room about whatever happens. And I think that I'm going to take this stance right now. There are some that want. Obviously, there's a lot of people, especially those attached to the Pac-12, who want them to survive. There are people in college football that want every conference to survive. And there are some that want to see them, go bye-bye. And perhaps that would benefit other conferences. Most of the time, people bring up perhaps the Big 12. Whether that's true or not remains to be seen. But I think everybody wants to see an ending, right? How much longer do you think? Can it go past this month, which is next Friday? Can it go past when Pac-12 Media Days, which is in about a month?
I can't imagine this can go past Pac-12 media days, and I think that there have to be aspects of the process that have to be sped up. The reporting has been pretty sketchy on SMU and what would be the parameters that they would need to be able to exit the American Athletic Conference. San Diego State's very well documented, and they're kind of already starting what feels like it could be a protracted battle with the Mountain West Conference. But they need to formally resign by June 30th, or they're on the hook for $34 million. And it's really hard to, imagine any scenario in which it is that San Diego State can join the Pac-12 and actually pay that money back to the Mountain West Conference, given what the projected numbers are for the Pac-12. So there has to be movement on that front. The issue that the Pac-12 has in terms of only having 10 teams is that in terms of trying to get that broadcasting money up, they have an inventory problem. And so there really, I think, are needs to not only add 2 more members to add an additional slate of games every week, but also this idea of how much more money could be brought in by having the Southern California, San Diego market, and then also at least a part of the Dallas market. So at least on San Diego State for sure, potentially SMU as well, there's going to have to be some movement on the expansion front before June 30th. And that isn't necessarily going to come in the form of the Pac-12 offering an invitation. It will come actually, at least in San Diego State's case, and them just formally resigning from the Mountain West Conference. And if they don't do that, then at that point in time, I think things start getting pretty dicey, because I can't imagine that you have a media deal that isn't tied to inventory. And if those schools can't get out of their existing deals, then you're stuck at 10 members. And then at that point, where does that media deal go?
We have had a writer who covers Washington State back when the USC and UCLA story broke about a year ago. But as someone who's a Washington State alum, and oh, by the way, a fan of anyone who's a fan of a school that might be kind of like a little bit nervous, there's nobody right now among the 8 remaining teams in the Big 12 that did not have heartburn on many occasions in the last 10 or 12 years, because the Big 12 has lost Nebraska, Colorado, Missouri, A&M, now Texas and OU after this year. Is that the same feeling you get, that kind of the unknown of where Washington State might end up?
Well, I think that those of us who are diehard Washington State fans are definitely really nervous about where this is going to go. I mean, I think that there's good reason to believe that the Pac-12 is going to survive for at least another cycle, if not more. I think that the expansion of the college football playoff to 12 teams and an automatic berth for conference champions is going to be a game changer for parity across college football, which I think is going to be good. It's going to help out leagues like the Pac-12 and the Big 12 forward. But if Washington and Oregon bolt to the Big 10, as some have expected, and the 4 corner schools, or at least Colorado and Arizona, go to the Big 12, then Washington State's really on an island. There's rumors about, what's going to wind up happening with the ACC down the road. There are a number of schools in that conference, including the likes of Syracuse and Louisville, Wake Forest, maybe even Duke, that will be, Power 5 schools that would be left out of a new wave of realignment, and Washington State could potentially be a part of something like that in the APAC. The Mountain West Conference is not a good home for Washington State in terms of its budget model. Our athletics program will tank, I think, in that situation. I think some of us know that our current president, Kurt Schultz, is the former president of Kansas State, was really active in realignment in the Big 12 the last time around, or before this last round of realignment. And I think that some of us, quietly hope that if all this falls apart, that Washington State might find a home with some Big 12 schools, which I think would be a good place for us if the Pac-12 doesn't work out. If you are walking around, if you don't mind, because we're getting a little bit of noise, but it's so far great. We appreciate your time and the insight. What in your gut do you think's going to happen? I think the Pac-12 is going to stick together. I think that and make it through for another immediate cycle, and then we're going to see what happens with the expanded college football playoff in terms of what happens with the sport. I think that Colorado is the one school that really is really the 50-50 in this entire thing. If you recall back to Coach Prime's press conference, there was a a Colorado writer who asked their athletic director about whether or not they had the money to pay for it, and he said, "Not now, but we're going to." And that's revealing about the hole that Colorado has dug in all of the stuff that's come around with Coach Prime, which is a great investment, but it's a costly one. They need money. And the Big 12 is in some ways, an interesting fit for a school like Colorado, because I think that, in contrast to the Pac-12, if the Pac-12 survives, Oregon, Washington, and Utah stand as kind of the presumptive favorites every year in that new conference. In the Big 12, there are a lot of candidates, but who the big dog is, outside of Baylor, of course, I think is a little bit more of a question. And so I think that Colorado may feel like, in addition to being able to make more money in the Big 12, they may have a better chance of being more competitive as well.
Yeah, it's really been it's been unbelievable how long it has taken, and obviously now everybody waits. Obviously, all of the 10 remaining teams, they all wait. UCLA and USC and UCLA, whatever, it doesn't affect them, right? Because they're moving on in a year. So, and then you have the ability that one or two that might be added. We keep hearing, and discussion is about whether Colorado or somebody else might leave. To me, the bigger story is a couple of Group of 5 schools are out there waiting on whether or not they have a chance to be a part of a Power 5 Autonomy 5. And that's just as big, and that might happen, who knows, in the end. Schultz was, as you mentioned, at Kansas State, and that is a wild card. And not only how he handles sometimes the Big 12 and what they weave through, but how he could possibly have the relationships to get things done. What are your thoughts about George Kliavkoff?
Boy, the guy has had, the toughest hand that any, incoming commissioner could have. But I think that, even somebody who wants to be on his side, and I'm one of those, it's pretty hard to give him anything other than an F. You fall asleep at the wheel and you lose, your two biggest brands, the two schools that you couldn't afford to lose, you lose, along with a failed alliance that preceded that. You have to think that he had an opportunity to have the exact same deal with ESPN and Fox that your mouth was able to achieve by opening up those negotiations early, which was a brilliant move. And at that point in time, there was really, the Pac-12 found themselves, really kind of bidding against themselves. And that ushered into, a tricky economy, and a broadcast market that went from really, really hot, last summer to really, really cold as soon as the Big 12 closed their deal. So unless, a real miracle happens, and potentially it does with a streamer, I think that ESPN's announcement that they're moving to essentially just becoming a streaming platform in 3 years is probably making the idea of the Pac-12 getting a mostly streaming only deal probably a lot more palpable for the president. But Kliavkoff has not delivered the goods. He's been silent throughout, which is probably something that the media partners appreciate, but as a PR move, he's been getting crushed by Big 12 media and others. It certainly has been a disappointing start, and hopefully it isn't a tragic one.
Hey, man, appreciate it. Enjoy your follow, and also following you. Good luck to Wazzu, and also a lot is said about Colorado or Four Corner schools, or obviously you have those that are kind of a part of the hierarchy with even Cal and Stanford. We know what's happening with USC and UCLA, but I'm telling you, Oregon State, Washington State, they've been through, are going through, or I hope not, what a lot of teams in the Big 12 have dealt with. And everyone kind of feels like Washington and Oregon will end up on their feet no matter what might happen with the Pac-12. Thanks for your time. Enjoy the weekend. Let's stay in touch.
Sounds good. Stick them and go Cougs, man.
That's Coug-A-Sutra, Wazzu alum blogger. His name is Michael. He